Okay, hello, Professor Gruhn here, and we are now in Chapter 3 of Murach's jQuery. We're actually starting at page 100, so that means 100 pages are behind us plus the appendix. So we're actually knocking it through pretty good. We're going to start talking about the document object model, which is pretty much foundational for JavaScript and actually for all of HTML development, web development. If you've taken the Web 1 class, if you've done HTML, you have been working with the DOM, and maybe you didn't realize it. And what that is that there's a structure to the to your web page, and that structure is defined, excuse me, by the HTML tags. I'm not going to bother reading all the objectives. You've already read them online, and you can read them in the PowerPoint slides which you have. I'm going to mainly hit the high points of this chapter. And good news is this chapter is not near as hard as chapter 2 is. So you can, this week, starting week 2, you can breathe a little sigh of relief. So if you take a look here at a web page, and what I want you to do is flip back and forth between page this slide 5 and slide 6, which basically are described on page 101 in the text. And you'll see that this visual representation of the various tags are the tags that are listed in the text document. And what you can start to see is the hierarchy of the DOM, and that you see that the first point is the HTML. Well, your highest open letter right there is your HTML tag right here and here. Within the HTML tag, you then have another level where you have the head tag, and then you have the body tag. HTML tag, head tag, body tag. Within the head, we have titles. Within the body, we have an H1 field, and then form. We have a label, an input, and a span. And then we actually have inner HTML in the actual text itself. So if you look at this picture here, you should be able to see all of those represented in the HTML tag. Now, on page 100, the very first paragraph, or the second paragraph, figure 3.1 presents the DOM scripting concepts that you need to understand before you start DOM scripting. First, the document object model, or DOM, is built as an HTML page and loaded into the browser. So if you have made an HTML page, you have actually created a document object model. Second, you can use JavaScript or jQuery to change the DOM. So you can change elements within the document that you've created. And third, as soon as the DOM is changed, the web page is updated to reflect those changes. That's the magic of DOM scripting. So I was looking at the chapter, and it gets into this email application and stuff like that. And I said, how can I demonstrate something that's really important is that the DOM changes once you find a DOM object or a DOM item, you can change it real time. We're used to having a page display, and it's pretty static. So what I'd like you to do, take a look. I've got this page here where basically what I did was I took my template page from chapter 2 that I had created, the second video, stripped out all of the function code. None of these buttons work except this first one. And as I go through the chapter, I'll add something. Notice that header text right here. And if I do a right click, view page source, what you'll see is right here, the H1 tag. What I did to the H1 tag is I gave it an ID called main title. So I now, this H1 tag now has a title, so we can actually talk to it and understand and do things with it. And remember that we're getting elements by ID. And so at that point here, I'm still doing the loads based upon the button. It doesn't really have anything to do, but what's going to happen is this. Watch this. If I go, here's my page. Watch the title. I click. I am displaying the current value of the title in an alert box. Professor Gruhn, Murach, jQuery Chapter 3 video. I'm going to click OK, and it's going to go to the next line of code in the function. But watch the background here. Watch what happens. Put new title here. Let's take a look at the code that did that. And it's actually really straightforward. So we basically have our button in our HTML tag. Most important is we are adding to the H1 title a main title ID. We're going to call the button1 function. The first thing I do is get this text, the document get element ID. I'm getting the inner HTML. It's not value like we did on the forms for the text boxes, but it's the inner HTML related to that tag. And then I'm displaying that text. Then what I'm doing is saying document, get the element by ID, main title, that's the name of that H1 tag, that inner HTML, I want to let that now equal put title here. And so just by this one line of code, I don't even need these two lines of code, but I wanted to show you that I was reading the inner HTML for the H1, and then I alerted it out. But this one line of code right here changed that value. Let's watch it again. I got to refresh the page, and then there's the thing, boom, and the alert happens. So page 100 is proven to be true that we can use JavaScript to in fact change elements on in the DOM, and they change instantaneously. Okay, I did make a quick change to piece of the code. I did not have the HTTP listed in the links, and what I also did was I've added on button 3, let's get a list of the LI tags, and you'll see the code for that on page 105. Give a couple of little snippets there. So if you take a look here, what I've done, remember looping, this is where chapter 2 becomes important. The looping here, I'm getting a list of elements, which basically puts them into an array, and I get the list, the length of that array, and I'm looping over it, and I'm displaying each link one at a time. Then I'm also doing the same thing here based on the LI tag. The first one I did it based on the A tag. Button 3 is based on the LI tag, and it's going to show what's in that. And basically I have display tags, display links, which ends up going into the alerts, and just a couple of simple little loops. So we're having to get the elements by the tag name so we can see what's on the page. And then by knowing how many elements there are there, we can then loop over them. And ultimately, if we had an ID, we could change a specific one, or we can do things with that at different points. So let's find my HTML code. Here's a code. And here, there's a better display. Before it was displaying with some weird stuff in it. So there's a display of all the links that are in the A tag. And then here, notice I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 4 li tags in my HTML, and now here, that's the code that's within the li tag button. And so you can see, you know, here's the li tags, the first and the end of those, and it's showing the HTML that's within that. The point is that with DOM scripting, we get to know exactly what's on the page. And once we know what's exactly on the page, whether it's through a tag or whether it's through an ID or whether it's through a class, we can use JavaScript to change things. Now, on page 106 and 107, it walks you through the email list application, which you have in the book exercises. And what you need to do is pull up the book exercises. Let's see. Hang on a second. So in your student download um, from zip file from the book, you have book apps, exercises, and the solutions. Right here, the book apps, we're in chapter 3, and there's an email list, an FAQs, a timers, an image swap. That one's really good, and the slideshow. Now, here's this time to start thinking about your final project. What you will be required to do for your final project is implement some cool jQuery stuff and JavaScript code into your website. Now, you'll create a folder called CST250/project. It's up to you if you want to take a project you've already been working on in your Web 1 class to make it better, or if you want to start a new one or do a new project for somebody else. Um, but one of the requirements is going to be to implement JavaScript and implement jQuery, implement some APIs, implement social media. So for instance, I'm going to look at FAQs, and here's an index page. We pull that out. This is really slick. And this being able to turn on and off, nice little FAQ page. So if you have a website project where you're describing a pet store or something like that, this is a nice way to allow user interaction on your web page, and it becomes dynamic. So this FAQ example is a great use of JavaScript. Going back, the email list. The email list basically is doing editing and just make sure that before I can actually send and do the page, that these fields actually have data in it. In the fundamentals class, this is really important code because what will happen is you don't want your PHP script to update a database or send an email out with null values. And so now the issue here is it accepted everything, but that's not a valid email address. If I did this, notice here, it was at least comparing the first field to the second field. Here, delete that, letting us both know. So this type of data validation becomes very important as users would enter data into a form and be able to don't let the program go any further until you validated that the data is happening. And what's really good is that's all happening at the client side, so it doesn't go back to the server, and it's very quick. FAQ timers, I haven't looked at that. What do we got here? So I think this is something that you're still working on, that the book's still working on there. So we have time, number of seconds on this page. Here we go. So it's letting you know. And what's interesting here is this is happening real time, is that this value of seconds, the page keeps happening over and over again. So as you read through the chapter, you'll be able to run this page and then look at the JavaScript code to see how it's happening. What's really nice about this book, and this is what I like, it freaked me out, chapter 2, because it just covered way too much information. But now it's getting kind of simple, where we have this email list application on page 106, and it's showing you the HTML. Page 108 and 109. Now it's showing you and walking you through the JavaScript code, and you can see the relationship between the code and the activity of the page. Now page 110, the FAQs application, page 111. So you can see how it works, you can see the code. Page 111 shows it in the browser, shows the HTML, it shows you the CSS. And so look at each one, read the page, and then run the application. Page 112 and 113 now gets into the JavaScript for the FAQs application. Canceling default actions, so when an event happens, you can it'll tell you how to not let it happen. What's really key there is returning a value of false is kind of the answer that basically says by returning a value of false, it won't do what you tried to do. So sometimes when you're writing JavaScript code, you need to say, oops, wait a minute, I don't want to do that. Preloading images. So the image piece is really good that you can preload images, and then on page 118 and 119, you've got this image swap where you click on the images up above, and that main picture will display. Let's see if oh, image swap. So now all this code is explained on page 118 and 119, 120, and 121. So now we have so now by tapping that, we have these little thumbnails, and the main picture is showing. Also notice here that that text is showing as well. So you could actually have an array of descriptions showing instead of just those numeric values. So you could create a description list and show those as well. So this would be a really nice thing to add to your final project. Use of timers, we went over that real quick. The slideshow application is there. And then that gets us to page 130, 131. So what's really nice is we can breathe a sigh of relief. Chapter 3 is far easier than Chapter 2. You have gone through some heavy-duty understanding of JavaScript code, but you're not going to have to take all of that with you into this class. But what you can take from Chapter 2 is understanding how bits and pieces of code work, that you can look at the code and then make changes and tweaks to it as you would need. And you will be doing that in this class, absolutely. So the good news is you're probably not going to write a whole lot of stuff from scratch, but you'll be tweaking things to make it work. Let's take a look. I'm going to try to flip through I really kind of just skipped over this quickly. We've covered that. The relationships of parent nodes, child nodes, first child, last child, that's all explained in those earlier pages. And then basically, here's the email app. It's talking about the email, talking about how to get the elements by tag name, getting the classes and the attributes, getting an array of elements. We did this with the A tags. Also notice here you can also get a list of all the images that are on a page. Here, the LI tag, we did that. Working with attributes, where we're getting an attribute of a given item. The email list application, that's all explained. What I like about the slides here, the email is pointing out the most important pieces here. The FAQ application is now explained. So as you're reading the book, definitely pull up the apps in the chapter so you can see and compare, okay, when I click this, it's doing that. There's the HTML code, the CSS code, the JavaScript code. Default actions on a click event. Browser compatibility. Now the image stuff. We work with a lot. JavaScript does a lot of image things. Preloading images is really good because what happens is it makes your response time a lot faster. The other thing too is make sure that you don't take a really huge image file from your camera directly and shrink the image size down so that the image sizes are smaller and will load faster as well. Image swap, image swap. Now this is the little timer, little startup message and timer piece. And slideshow application. I don't know if there's code for that or not, but you can take a look at that, and that's pretty straightforward. And then exercise the future value application. Notice here that we're doing some error checking, making sure that the user typed things in. And we're going to modify the slideshow as a part of the extra. I think you have that code, and but you're not required to do the extra stuff. You are required to do the shorts. And here's the short, and here's the short. If you do the extra stuff, I'll think of a way of giving you extra credit for that. If you're interested, let me know. But that's a pretty good overview of Chapter 3. It's a lot lighter touch, and I hope that the thing that I showed you at the very beginning really helps kind of prove the point of what is. And I'm going to leave the other buttons null in my sample HTML. That way, if you want to add some test things to it yourself, just go ahead and do that. I think I had 8 buttons originally, and I probably only used 3 buttons in this video. But I'll leave those other ones as null, and you can just try things out. The good news about HTML, nobody dies, nobody gets hurt. This is not hearts and livers, as my wife would say. You can try something out. You might end up spending some late nights finding a semicolon or a missing curly Q bracket. But the good news is it's just code and it's a lot of fun. And again, getting through Chapter 2, Chapter 3, Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is going to be interesting because it's debugging, and debugging can be kind of a pain in the neck. But that's where I also recommend do a Google search on JavaScript Online Code Validator or JavaScript online validators, and you can cut and paste your JavaScript code, your whole page, and see how that works. And oftentimes they find errors and stuff. Okay, I don't want this to get too much longer, so hopefully this video has helped you understand the chapter a little more. But the key points are we're talking about the DOM, the um, document object model. We're talking about having access to the various elements of the DOM. There is a hierarchy of the DOM, HTML, head, body, and even within all those elements. You can get the values and the classes and the attributes of the DOM. You can change the colors. You can change the color. Try that for like the header. Change the color from blue to red or something like that. You can change any aspect of any part of the page can be controlled by JavaScript DOM scripting. Great. Have a great day.